Welcome everyone to another episode of Ecom Roundtable. I'm Ryan Kramer. I'm with Ping Pong Payments. I'm the Partnerships and Global Affiliate Manager here at this company, and we have an exciting event for you guys today. We're talking about selling into Europe and everything you need to know to simplify the process and all the different kinds of tips and tricks that you should know in order to get and be successful. But it's not just me today. It's not going to be my own talking head like I typically do on Crossover Commerce, our podcast. I have three other friends in the industry that are going to talk in very high level and can get very detailed in both global logistics, talking about VAT and taxing, and as well as different marketplaces all around the world. But specifically today, people are always asking us, specifically me, I know for a fact, they're saying, hey, when's a good time to start to diversify? If I'm selling in the United States or I'm selling in one marketplace, how do we grow this business and start taking it to the next level? What's that good market? Should I go to Canada? Should I go to Mexico? Should I go to the UK, Europe, so on and so forth? So that's why this event exists. That's why I brought my cohorts, if you will, my mates, my chums, if you will, Jonathan Matthews, Francois, and Paul Sonveld. We are all over the world right now. It's early, late afternoon, evening time, all across the globe, and we're going to bring the best tips and tricks that we know in order for you to be successful in selling into specifically Europe. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Great to be here again, Ryan.
Yeah, so this is part two. So if you're watching this now and you are watching live, again, this is a live episode. So if you have questions or comments or concerns or just want to say hi to us, feel free to chime in, put your comments or questions in the comment section. We will see those live and throw them up so that our panel of experts can answer your questions. It's not like Clubhouse. You'll see our faces. We have a little bit of a presentation as well to give some takeaways and information as well. And you can also go to a landing page to get the same information that we're going to be talking about today. So for a quick buzz around the panel, if you will, Jonathan, let's start with you. Quickly introduce yourself and what you do at VAT Global.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Ryan. My name is Jonathan Matthews. I manage the partners function as well as the e-commerce sales function at VAT Global. Yeah.
All right. So short and sweet. I love it. Paul, if you want to hop on next and introduce yourself.
Sure. I am one of the co-founders of Merchant Spring. Merchant Spring is a analytics platform that allows you to connect all of your marketplaces and e-commerce channels into a single dashboard so you can better manage your business and save a whole lot of time, especially for professional marketplace sellers that trade cross-border and marketplace agencies. So yeah, great to be here again. Thanks, Ryan.
Yep. Awesome. And then Francois, why don't you kick us off as well?
Yeah, I am part of the founding team and the director of business development here at Noviland, and we're a full supply chain solution all the way from working with new through 7- and 8-figure sellers to help them source effectively, manage their production oversight, quality control, and logistics to the final destination.
Excellent. Very easy, very straightforward. And then obviously Ping Pong Payments, we're a cross-border solution helping people save money when sending or receiving funds all around the world, no matter what marketplace you might be selling in. So gentlemen, jumping into Europe, Europe is a big kind of quasi, it's a little bit different now in 2021 because there's a very glaring nation on its own island, both physically and both figuratively, and that's Europe, or not Europe, that's Britain, the UK, right? So we're not going to be talking. We'll make sure we make the distinguishing differences between the two because there is one versus the other on what might be a little bit different. But specifically Europe, we're talking about 17 or I want to say 17 or so countries that Amazon is existing and they're starting to launch in Europe more so now than ever. The most recent one, Poland, and that was the most successful launch in Amazon's history in terms of marketplace. So as Europe continues to grow, and we saw this data and analytics that Europe is not even the 10th largest or largest marketplace across the board in all of e-commerce on the shopper side. So that means to me, and what I'm hearing is there's money, there's opportunity, and there's growth potential. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So with that being said, we're going to be talking about simplifying selling into Europe. And I believe, Paul, you're going to kick us off with what you guys at your company see at Merchant Spring. And you can kind of kick us off with the information that we're going to be covering today.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, look, why don't we set the scene a little bit and paint a little bit of a landscape picture. Now, I know a lot of people dialing in today or listening in, you'll be very familiar with the Amazon ecosystem or the eBay ecosystem. So I thought maybe we'd start there. And if you want to just bring up the next slide there, Ryan, the one with the map. I've just, let's just start out, looking at both Amazon and eBay, and where do they play? As you can see, they have both, they have strong presence in Europe, and they have been, there for some time. Now, I think Ryan mentioned this before. We've alluded to Amazon. Amazon seems to be investing, quite heavily in Europe right now. So they've always had the sort of the large markets, Germany, UK, Spain, France, and Italy. But they've been rolling out a number of other markets in the last couple of months. Most notably Poland, but also the Netherlands and Sweden. And actually, they're also in the middle of building a fulfillment center in Ireland right now. So I think we'll see them make an announcement in that space pretty quickly as well. Now, obviously, the great thing about Amazon is, the platform is essentially the same, to North America or Australia or Japan. So actually, entering these markets is, in terms of, learning curve and all of that, very, very easy. There is a slight spanner in the works. Ryan, you alluded to it before. Many sellers would typically focus on the UK, set up sort of their main store over there, and then use Amazon's pan-European fulfillment network to basically list on all the other big marketplaces and fulfill from the UK. That has got significantly harder or near impossible following Brexit. So really what you now need to do as a minimum is really have a two-pronged approach in terms of Amazon. So certainly the customers that we are working with, typically they're still interested in the UK, so they'll open up a store there, particularly if you're coming from an English-speaking market. Obviously, it's much easier to set up in the UK in terms of your listings and existing content than it might be for some of the other markets. But then if you really want to go after the rest of Europe, you really have to set up in France or Germany or some of the other markets, and to really tap into that pan-European fulfillment network. Mind you, I would also add that just because Amazon has got local sites in these countries doesn't mean they they don't ship to the other markets in Europe, right? So they pretty much ship everywhere. So if you go to if you're in Austria, you'll go to shop at Amazon Germany. If you're in Ireland right now, you'll shop at the UK, and the like. They've got really good coverage there. Interesting, Ryan, to see here that Amazon Poland has been the most successful international launch. I would like to add that Amazon seems to claim that every time they launch a new market. I would, for those listening in, it does take Amazon many years to sort of reach critical mass. We've seen that here in Australia. We've seen that with the Netherlands right now. It just takes time, and also they don't tend to come with a big bang and give all the features. Things are rolled out gradually. So, for example, Amazon has only just released its advertising platform in the Netherlands, and it's not available in Sweden yet. So, you won't get all the bells and whistles that you're used to seeing, say, in North America or elsewhere.
I was to say, isn't that convenient how Amazon keeps upping itself and saying it's the most successful each time it opens in a new country? How convenient. Yeah.
That's right. And look, if you determine what the metrics of success are, then it's easy to celebrate, right? So, I think they're, look, clearly they are getting better at, they've got a playbook, right, in terms of how they enter new markets, and they are, getting better and better at that. Just on eBay, I know a lot of you guys will sell on eBay as well. eBay's had a very strong presence as well. eBay, had different market positions. So in the UK and Germany, they're very, very strong there. But certainly, a second player to someone like an Amazon. But as you can see, they focus on some different pockets. They've got stronger presence across Austria and Switzerland. They've got local sites. They're already Ireland. And actually, they don't really do much in terms of Scandinavia. So, Amazon has really, moved out there and sort of, staked the flag out there as well. For those of you that don't know, eBay also owns a very large marketplace in Turkey called, I don't know if I pronounce this rightly, but Gidiyor. Sort of incumbent player there, very, very large, and a strong presence. Unlike Amazon, actually, who's been in Turkey for a while now and hasn't really made substantial inroads in terms of presence there, certainly from a numbers point of view. So just quickly on the numbers from a consumer point of view, you can have a look at the next slide, Brian. Here you can sort of see, I'm just showing you here roughly what is the size of the opportunity in terms of shoppers, right? So what is the total number of visitors in millions that each of these markets get by platform, just comparing Amazon and eBay. As you can see, Germany and the UK are, for both platforms, by far the largest market. eBay is bigger in the UK. It's got a stronger presence there. For Amazon actually is grown as a bit bigger in terms of Germany. I'm talking about visitors here. As you can see, a lot of markets showing reasonable growth. So the figures here I've taken are, January and Feb compared to January and Feb last year. So just giving you a sense of how big the market is and whether they're growing. And look, no doubt, COVID's really helped in terms of this picture as well. However, as you can see, in terms of Amazon towards the bottom there, Netherlands, Sweden, don't really have any numbers for Poland yet. These markets are quite small. Very few people getting to the habit yet of shopping there. For example, in the Netherlands, you've got a dominant player called Bol Marketplace, that has been around for many, many years. So it will take Amazon time. So certainly, I wouldn't steer you towards, entering Europe by starting in those markets. I would certainly focus on the top 3 or maybe top 4 there as well. But of course, there's more than just Amazon and eBay. And if you go to the next slide, I've just looked at some of the, obviously the big 5 markets and actually giving you a sense of, what else is out there. So this actually talks about, how many active sellers do we see on these marketplaces? And of those active sellers, what's our estimate? And this is, proprietary research that Merchant Spring did last year with the support of SimilarWeb. How many sellers are actually local as a proxy for, how open are these marketplaces to international sellers? Some certainly favor domestic sellers, where others are very open. So for example, if you take the UK, it's largely an Amazon and eBay play. Yes, there are a number of smaller marketplaces there. OnBuy, getting a lot of publicity right now, and I'm sure Jonathan can speak to this later as well. But the sort of 3rd, 4th, 5th players are really quite small, and I think you really have to make sure that you've got a good alignment with the consumer and the category before you entertain those. France is a completely different story. Actually, you've got some really large domestic marketplaces. So Fnac, one of the largest retailers in France, they have a very strong marketplace. Cdiscount and Darty, I think the numbers here for Darty are a little bit understated, but these 3 are certainly large, and there's a whole plethora of other marketplaces there. What we are finding, though, certainly someone like a Cdiscount and Darty are very open to international sellers. In fact, a lot of international sellers sell on those marketplaces. So there'll be a great, great way into the French market. Especially once if you've gone through the effort of translating your ASINs into French, you've done all that work. You set up maybe a customer service operation. Then actually, certainly worth exploring someone like a Cdiscount or a Darty. Spain, largely Amazon and eBay, but Fnac is there as well. So again, there's some synergies there in terms of familiarity with the platform. Obviously, language will need to be translated, but good option there. And then Germany, Italy, right? So Italy is large in Amazon and eBay market, but there's another 3rd player called ePrice and some smaller ones as well. Again, worth considering, and I'll tell you why in a little bit more, in a sec. And then Germany, again, Amazon and eBay, really clear number 1 and number 2, but some other strong ones as well. So we've got Otto, the local one there. Rakuten has got a strong presence, but unfortunately, Rakuten did make some announcements last year. They're really pulling back out of Western markets, meaning Europe and North America, really to refocus back on their home market in Japan. So I'm not sure what the future is going to hold for Rakuten. And of course, Zalando, for particularly for the fashion category, a very big marketplace, and actually not just in Germany, but across Europe. Now, before I stop talking, because I've been talking for a long time, so if you just go back to that regional slide, there is one interesting play here in that a lot of the local marketplaces, domestic marketplaces, are run on a platform called Miracle. So, some of you may have never heard of this platform, but Miracle is one of the largest marketplace platform providers, and they run marketplaces, in the United States and in Australia as well. The great thing about these is if you've already spent time integrating with one of the Miracle platforms, say for example you've integrated with ePrice in Italy, that is on the Miracle platform. Actually, the incremental effort to actually onboard onto another marketplace with the same platform is quite small. There is a number. For example, you've got ePrice, you've got Darty, and you've got a whole range of you can find a list of these marketplaces on our website. But you've got a whole range of probably 50 marketplaces across Europe that run on the Miracle platform. So it's a bit of a shortcut to get onto a whole range of other smaller marketplaces in a low cost way. Just lastly, I mentioned before in the intro that we've got a tool, a marketplace analytics platform. If you want to just go to the next slide, Ryan. Very delighted to offer anyone who's listening in today a special offer, 50% off our enterprise plan for the first 3 months. So it saves you about $148, only available to listeners on the podcast. So if you go to our landing page, we'll post that up in the chat later, and it's also on our social media posts. You can download these materials and you'll find the offer inside. I'm going to stop talking now, Ryan, because that's way too long.
Hey, that's okay. That's why we're here. And so the content, again, for everyone who's watching this as well, you can actually check out, you can actually go to the Merchant Springs website. And if you go to the website in the comment section below, if you're on LinkedIn, you can definitely check that out as well. It's merchantspring.io/ecommerce/roundtable-series. And you can actually download the content we're all talking about today as well. That being said, no more pitching about that. We got a lot more to cover today as well. And before we move on, if there's other questions, again, this is live, so we can obviously see if you have questions, go ahead and submit content education or content questions, specifics, things like that, where our panelists can help you out. We just want to say hi to Lisa, who's watching on YouTube. Hello, Lisa. And then for everyone else who's watching this maybe later, you can tag the company or the individual on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube as well. We'll make sure we get those questions answered at a different time. Awesome. Good stuff from you, Paul, as always. There's always growth in different areas. People just have to understand Amazon's not the only player in the world. It's a big player, not the only player as well. But you just have to understand that not all the tools and tips and tricks are available for everyone in those different marketplaces. Is there one that's specifically just hamstringing sellers from being successful, you think, in one versus another? Just quickly, like you said, advertising and PPC just got released, and DSP is getting released in Europe. What's one of the marketplaces that's really hamstringed because it doesn't have all the features and functionality that like .com has?
From an Amazon perspective, right?
Yeah, let's talk Amazon.
Yeah, certainly, Sweden and Poland, right? They have very little there. At least you guys have got FBA. When Amazon launched in Australia, for the first 6 months, we didn't even have FBA. So those markets are hamstrung, but there's always a silver lining, right? And the silver lining is this, which is yes, they're small. There's very few buyers yet, but so there's a very little competition too, right? So what we do find in those markets, those sellers who proportionally sort of invest energies and times do sort of set themselves up for year 2 and year 3 and can reap the benefits of that. So it's certainly I don't want people to think, oh, don't invest in those markets, not worth it. All I'm saying is, don't think because Amazon's big, you're going to do the same sales you're doing in Poland as you do in North America next week. Right. It will take time, but you use it and build a strategic position.
Is there a go ahead, Jonathan.
I wanted to jump in there just to say that there's a lot of hesitancy post-Brexit, and I think it goes to your point, Paul, is that in a lot of these new markets, when there's hesitation, there's opportunity. And I think if you can kind of deliver your strategy the way that you had initiated it, there's a lot of opportunity in these markets whilst they're growing. It's about being smart and clever and being early. All the sellers in Netherlands, Poland, Sweden, still very early. So, if those are markets you're looking at, the opportunity is probably bigger long-term in the newer markets than in the older ones where they're a bit more saturated.
Yeah.
In the European market, is there an opportunity that Amazon hasn't gotten into yet, or a nation that Amazon could be really big in that they just haven't gotten to yet? Because it's not covering every nation.
So they're not covering every nation, but they're really moving where the demand is. I mean, when you look at the pan-European network, it initially serviced around 75% of the EU market by density. And as smaller towns or countries, kind of move to buying online, they follow the buyer.
Sure.
So where they are, I would say, is where they need to be. Austria, Belgium, you can purchase from there. There could be a fulfillment, but Europe being fairly small and the fulfillment centers they have, they're almost servicing them under the Prime model in many ways.
Are we seeing success in terms of like cost of goods and like actually margins? If you're selling the same good in like the United States, or we talked about Australia, what are margins typically? Maybe Paul, if you have that data over in Europe, are they higher? Are they typically lower in different marketplaces? Does anyone have that stat?
The difference that I can see, Ryan, so, obviously there's some different incremental, shipping costs and landed costs and the like, depending on whether your boat gets stuck in the Suez Canal or not.
I knew that would come up today, guys.
Yeah,
it's just a matter of time.
I think I may have just stolen something from Francois, so I apologize.
I hope he has a meme in his presentation with the Suez Canal.
The fact it took 20 minutes is surprising in and of itself.
What we do find is certainly, this varies a little bit by country, but in general, European sellers. And I'm completely generalizing because this changes by category, and the like. But level of competitiveness, particularly around advertising, is not as intense. So what does that mean? Is you should be able to achieve a lower ACOS or TACOS in Europe than you're achieving in North America, especially where for non-English speaking markets where you're willing to invest in sort of the language piece, right? Because I do find that still a lot of US sellers or sellers that are used to English speaking markets are a little bit reluctant to jump into that foreign language, and they don't sort of jump in with all their energies and efforts, and because of that, I think competition is a little bit less. So those who do it are able to, I think, run much lower advertising budgets for a similar result.
Awesome, fair enough. Go ahead, Francois.
Question actually for Paul: is there any sort of statistics on the overlap between those that sell on eBay and on Amazon?
There is actually. Okay. I can try and dig it out.
You didn't have it in the presentation. I don't expect you to have it
until the top of the hour.
No, actually, I do have it, but it's deep down in the Google sheet there. But look, we look at overlap a lot in Europe. So if you were to pick a random Amazon seller, right, from North America versus Europe. In North America, if you ask them the question, are you selling on a platform outside of Amazon? I would say, and this relativity is important. Don't hold me to the absolute numbers, but 8 out of 10 would say, I'm an Amazon only seller because Amazon's so big, and other options are relatively smaller. That's great. In Europe, you're much more likely. You'll get, hey, I'm just not just on Amazon Germany. I'm on 3 others, just because it's so easy to do that. But typically, they will also be on, at least I would say 40%. Say, hey, I am on Cdiscount, or I'm on eBay, or I'm on Otto.de. There's sort of what we call marketplace promiscuity. It's an internal merchant spring term. Is significantly higher in Europe than it is in the US.
I think just to add to that, what we often find is Amazon is the dominant marketplace in the local country, And when you expand into a foreign country, you're then looking at the alternative solutions. It's quite cultural in many ways. In, like you had mentioned, Paul, in Netherlands, Bol is massive. So if you're selling in your local country, Germany, you're on Amazon most likely. And then as you move into these other markets, you are adding Amazon stores, but you are also then adding the bigger local markets. And depending on the country, you land up with quite a broad number of platforms that you're selling on.
Awesome. Well, that makes sense. And obviously, like here, there's so many different marketplaces that continue to grow and expand. And we're not just talking about like just regular marketplaces. We're talking about like social commerce. We're talking about like branded websites. So all those have their own functionality and growth opportunities as well. But part of that is also trying to figure out the number side of things. And I think that takes us nicely into the question I always have is, how expensive is it truly to get into Europe? And what is VAT or VAT? Do you call it VAT? Do you call it tax? What is it? Like, is it VAT tax, or is it, you know, all the questions that I'm sure that Jonathan spins his head around every single day and says, what the hell are you guys talking about? But anyways, to go into it, Jonathan, why don't we hop into your segment of VAT and compliance and go from there?
Perfect. Thanks.
People
Ryan.
may not even know what I'm talking about. Like, this is why we're here.
It's actually very possible that there's some listeners on the call that have never even seen the word. So I'll try to start as close to the beginning as possible. Just to give a bit of context around that global, my introduction was actually very selfish. It was just about me, nothing to do with the company I work for. So we very much work in the compliance and registration space. Very much a tech firm. We assist companies with understanding their obligations, B, assisting them with becoming VAT registered, and then once you are, call it VAT tax GST registered, you then have ongoing obligations. That's really where we fit in. We assist in centralizing that entire process. So this might sound quite weird if you haven't come across this, but if you need to be tax or VAT registered in 6 or 7 countries in Europe, you potentially have 6 or 7 different languages at 6 or 7 different frequencies with 6 or 7 different VAT rates. And that's where the complexity kind of comes in. So we ideally deliver that through a centralized solution. Now, with Europe, to get into what you call the free market, you have a concept called import VAT. So, I mean, Ryan, if you could just call it to 2 more slides. You can go, one further, perfect. So I wanted to really start with the importance of an import and how that really affects everything and anything from the start. So to get into Europe, you've got the free market, and the cost of entering the free market, which no longer includes the UK, was import VAT. Now, import VAT is charged as a percentage of the value of the goods coming in, and it's payable to clear your goods into the EU. There are many countries that function under this model, so it shouldn't be too foreign for EU sellers. What might feel foreign is the fact that the EU or the UK is no longer part of the EU. And then how do you treat that? So in theory, the UK might as well be the US or Australia or Japan, in that it's not part of the EU. You need to import your goods into it. You need to import your goods into the EU. And you really do have 2 markets that you're servicing, one being Europe and one being the UK. And I think Paul did mention it in how do you get your goods or move your goods or understand the flow of your goods to be able to service your markets. So it is just important to know the cost of getting your goods to service clients. It fluctuates between 19 to 23% of the value of the goods when you clear them. And then certain obligations come off that. So I think the next slide will assist in that. Now, before I move forward, I did just want to go through some key terms. These are really the key terms that if you want to trade in Europe, you really want to understand these terms. They also have a large effect on the tax/VAT obligations. So a fiscal representation is really the company that takes legal liability of your goods at the point of clearance. An IORI number is an import license. You need it if you want to import. DDP is a delivery duty paid. It means pretty much the business or the owner at DDP is liable for the taxes and the duties and is owner in the foreign country. And then you've got DDU, which is the complete opposite, where a seller is not liable, but the buyer is. You've got EDAP, which is delivered at place. And you've got the consignee, which very much links to a fiscal representative. And then you've got an import of record. Import of record, again, import of record, consignee, and fiscal rep really work together. These are the terms of ownership. And ownership is a crucial factor to determine who becomes liable for the VAT or the taxes. So I think just the next slide. Now, tax and VAT are obligations. They're things you have to do when you trigger certain obligations. Just to know, you can come down, one more down, one more. Perfect. So what is my supply chain and how this affects my compliance obligations? So this point was more along the lines of you've got a customer experience, and it does actually move to the next slide. These two really follow on from each other. Now, your supply chain can be you shipping from your warehouse in Australia direct to the end user in Europe. Your supply chain could mean you want to be prime and deliver same day, in which case you would move your goods right near your customers. You do have to take into account with your supply chain where your goods are moving, that you have import VAT, and where you fulfill from has a knock-on effect where you have to be VAT registered. So often the main trigger, and especially with Amazon having 7, 8, moving towards 9 or 10 FBA countries, in each country where you use FBA, you actually have no choice. You have to be VAT registered from the first time you own stock in that country. Now, FBA is a great model from a customer experience in that they're getting prime, they're getting their good today. You as the seller have a whole variety of questions. One of them being, are you aware that owning goods in, call it Germany, to sell to German customers triggers the need for a German VAT obligation? And then to report German taxes. Now, again, with the pan-EU FBA, and especially with the EU or UK sellers really struggling to move on pan-EU, there's been a large push at the moment for UK sellers to actually withdraw from pan-EU, withdraw their VAT numbers. It does put you in a bit of a tricky scenario in that it takes quite long to get a VAT number. So you could leave yourself open to, now I want to go back into pan-EU when things iron out. So there is this kind of in-between period for a lot of UK sellers that are struggling, even just struggling to get their goods into the EU, and even vice versa. At the moment, it does seem like it's quite blocked up. If we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so slightly taking it further, how different supply chains really affect your customer experience. So for me personally, when I buy on Amazon in the UK now, my experience that's the ultimate is you make a purchase and the product arrives at your door. There's no notification from the post office that you need to pay your import VAT. That's a scenario that now exists in Europe across EU, UK lines, in that if you're not shipping DDP and you're shipping DDU, which is unpaid duties, your client is actually required to make that purchase or to pay that import VAT. So you now actually have a scenario where the customer experience is actually being affected by your fulfillment method and model. And you've really then got to decide how you want to service your customers. Are they used to having a certain experience? And if they are, how do you set up your business to allow for that experience to continue? And I do think, just to have a note, there's a lot of terms that I am using. And again, if any questions with this webinar that we're having, feel free to kind of ask. If we can just go to the next slide. A lot of what I'm mentioning is relating to the cost of getting your goods into Europe, and that's your first cost. That's your biggest cost, especially if you're moving stock. Now, there are more solutions now whereby you can actually delay the payment of the import VAT. So that's your import VAT that's required to get into the free market. There's the UK, which has deferred accounting. So in theory, when you get your goods to the UK, you can delay paying import VAT, which is a massive cash flow benefit. You don't have to pay that cash up front. You can move your stock around. You can pay advertising. And then on sales, you collect VAT and you make payments. The other countries that do this would be Belgium, France, Ireland, and Netherlands. Those are your countries you'd really want to import into if you're trying to avoid paying import VAT. Just the next slide. And then the UK, there's been multiple changes in the EU. The first one came in on the 1st of January, which again was Brexit, but then there was the OMP, which is the online marketplace. So it really just defined Amazon in many ways as the party that is liable and required to charge the VAT and pay it to the tax office. So really what happened in the 1st of January and what will happen in the 1st of July, which I'll get to on the next slide, was very much driven by massive VAT fraud in the EU, whether that was non-EU sellers, EU sellers, and they've really just tightened the noose and the loop very, very slowly to eliminate this VAT fraud. And ultimately, the consequences of this will be a simplified solution for sellers. It's taken a couple of years, but in reality, sellers are now going to be making what they call a deemed supply to Amazon. Amazon will be doing the supply to the customer, and there's a threshold of around 135 GBP. And depending on if it's below or above, will depend on who pays. From the seller's perspective, it's going to feel and look very automated. You're going to run your VAT returns. What was already paid won't be on your return. What's liable will be. So what I'm saying shouldn't really have an effect on customers, but it's important to note that these are the things that are happening in Europe. And then just on to the last slide, which is IOSS and OSS. These are probably the buzzwords at the moment. Nobody really knows what they mean, but they're being said. IOSS is a simplification for importation. So it's the import one-stop shop. That's what the IOSS means. It is for non-EU businesses. Its due date is July. The definition is an electronic interface, which is actually a lot broader than the slide before, which was an OMP. And the IOSS is going to assist sellers with avoiding paying import VAT. You're going to potentially be allowed to declare everything on one VAT return. And the actual threshold across Europe is becoming standardized and is just going down, which I think for all EU sellers is a great thing. Particularly for VAT businesses, it might be a bit complicated. We might lose some registrations, but for sellers, it's going to be a simplification. And it's actually going to make Europe an even more attractive marketplace in that your compliance costs are most likely going down. And then you've got OSS. Now, OSS is excluding the import, but still a simplification. And again, coming in July, it's a double-pronged simplification coming in. And really very similar in that there's a single VAT return. There is you working with one VAT authority, all of the tax is due on one return, and then it's amongst the tax officers to maneuver that VAT where it's due. But ultimately, what we should see in the next 6, 7, 8 months in Europe is a real simplification of the compliance obligations. And then hopefully that will allow sellers to really expand and not worry too much. I think I did just want to leave on the point that Paul had brought up initially, in that we're currently seeing a lot of sellers stop, pause, and wait. And for me, that's creating opportunity for those that move, those that take the steps, those that back their supply chain, those that back their marketing and push. You're already with a lot less competition because there's a lot of sellers with a lot of confusion waiting to see what happens. Yeah, and then an exclusive offer for everyone on the call or anyone that kind of comes through this channel, really same as the previous one, 10% off your initial registration, and as long a chat as it needs to really understand your business and give you the best advice.
Yeah, take advantage of that, everyone, because that's serious savings in terms of getting compliant with Europe, especially if you're taking the next step in growing your business. Don't be scared. Talk to Jonathan and his team over at VAT Global, and make sure that you understand all of the nuances of, basically sales tax, what you need to file, when you need to file it, and all the things that are subject to tax thresholds, things like that. So make sure you take advantage of that specifically. Awesome. Thank you very much, sir. Moving right along kind of quickly in terms of the next topic, we want to talk logistics, right? And this is kind of a funny hot button topic of the past week of getting goods into from Asia into Europe, and a simple Suez Canal blockage can put many people behind in terms of profits and lose out profits. And that's kind of what we're working with, right? Francois, I'm not sure if you had a lot of panicked clients or not, but
well,
it was kind of funny. It was kind of funny in my context, but it's not
yes
good.
And no. I think it's funny in the sense that a gust of wind calls all this. It's not
Right.
funny in the sense that these knock-on effects are going to be vast. They're going to be vast globally. I mean, it's not just going to be, those that are impacting between China and the EU and those businesses, but we're going to look at a lot of knock-on effects when it comes to containers and backups when it comes to vessels. A lot of goods that were perishable are now going to be spoiled. So that's going to affect, pricing and availability of certain goods in the EU. So it's a little messed up to say. I personally think it's kind of funny. I mean, a lot of the memes were kind of messed up, but they're kind of funny at the same time. But it is an important topic, and we will touch on it. Unfortunately, I have no funny memes on it, but we will touch on. Jonathan, I actually had a quick question for you, and I think I know the answer, but just I guess clarification. So when you were talking about the DDU and DDP, Amazon's warehouses can't be the importer of record, right? You can't send in, and you would have to have your own importer of record. Amazon will refuse them. Is that right?
Correct. So Amazon, being the big fish, they just refuse point blank to take on any obligations outside of basically a direct B2B sale. And that would need to occur within Europe or even within country. So you really have to clear your goods, then sell to Amazon. But just to kind of take that question a bit further, in that scenario, are you selling direct to Amazon? Or are you still using their fulfillment? Because in either scenario, the same actual thing applies, but Amazon would never import goods. You would have to import it, become that registered, and then make what we call a local sale.
Okay. I guess in this instance, who I was speaking with before about it, they were just using one of Amazon's fulfillment centers. But I would imagine that it's the same thing as in the US. Amazon is not going to, try to be compliant or take any sort of responsibility. Why would they make it easy? Why would they make it that easy for you?
I mean, I think it's more along the lines of, for them, it is easy. Don't make it hard for them. They're going to stick with the easy route. It's already their model. Ultimately, when you're selling with or to Amazon in Europe, you got to be very aware that you have probably the highest level of compliance obligations than anywhere else in the world, because it's country next to country, each one different, and in multiple languages. You just need to kind of take that off the bat. The moment you're using fulfillment in another country, you're triggering obligations in Europe.
Right. All right,
Awesome.
we can dive into it.
Yeah, let's get right back into it.
The least sexy side out of all this, which is international logistics.
We have yet to get to my part, Francois. Don't you take that title. I'm just kidding.
But
we'll hop into it. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's two basic components to it. On the last time when we were talking about Australia and New Zealand, I talked a lot more into compliance and regulations, and I think there's just a bit too many to fluctuate through when it comes to the EU and the UK, and so I didn't touch on it too much. All I would say, I guess, in that regard is know what you're selling, and look up any of the compliance or labeling requirements within those said countries before you actually try to sell within those countries as well. But yeah, we can go to the next slide. So I guess what is really top of mind for everyone when it comes to international shipping are two things. It always comes down to time, and it always comes down to money. Unfortunately, right now, due to a lot of the knock-on effects from COVID, and I mean, we're talking about the level of knock-on of, just countries storing so much PPE in their stockpiles that they're limiting the number of containers in the world, the number of rail transport that had to go from China and Asia to the EU with a lot of PPE taking up a lot of that railway capacity has caused a lot of these prices to surge. And rightfully so, a lot of shipping carriers are charging premium dollar for the shipping. Keep in mind that they also didn't have much commerce over the course of a few months, which is huge. It's billions of dollars lost on their end. So I guess right now we can see them taking advantage of it a bit, but it's ultimately up to those shipping carriers to determine what those prices are going to be. And so when it comes to ocean freight and express air and something we didn't talk about last time because it wasn't an option is rail freight. Is that you do have these three different options, and each one has its pros and cons. So obviously with ocean freight, it's going to be the slowest. We saw that there are a lot of potential for issues when it comes to delays, and it could be port delays. When it comes to COVID, it could be the foreman, as we're seeing in Long Beach, 10% of their workforce just went out of commission due to COVID, and that caused a huge stockpile of vessels on the back end, causing weeks of delay for actually bringing those items in. And so that's the slowest, definitely, and I would consider one of the riskiest, but it is the cheapest. So when you're really weighing your options to, the P&L, I would say this is a great option if you're doing at least 1 to 2 cubic meters in shipping. And so I have a few estimates when it comes to shipping costs there, and that was ran through a few different freight forwarding companies. So we're looking at, for the 40-foot containers going from Shenzhen to Hamburg, I think I'm pronouncing that Hamburg, maybe, port to port, about 7,000 to 9,000, and then to the UK, you're looking at about 8,000 to 10,000, and those prices are definitely elevated for the time, probably around double a little bit more than double even of what you would usually pay. Those lead times are also extended, so 35 to 55. You would typically see somewhere in the 35 to 45 day range, but just accounting for some of the things that are going on as of 2 weeks ago, prior to this whole thing with the Suez Canal, you're looking at about 35 to 55 days. Right now, it really just depends. We're going to see these residual effects when it comes to vessels still docked and waiting to be let in, containers being processed through customs. It's all going to be a speed game, and it's all sort of up in the air. So I would talk to your freight forwarder, and whatever they tell you, add on maybe 10 to 20 days to it for sort of that just in case. Excuse me. And then, we go back one. Always jumping the gun, Ryan.
I tried to anticipate it. My bad.
You're all good. The next one is Express Air. Obviously faster than both, but it is the most expensive. And we're also seeing those lead times increase slightly. Not tremendous amounts, but definitely still faster than both rail and ocean. But it is going to be the most expensive. And right now we're seeing absurd prices of, $8 to $11 per kilogram. I know some people have asked, and some of the Facebook groups, they've been getting, $12, $13 per kilogram. I guess it just depends on who the shipping agent that they're using is and what sort of deal they have worked out with those shipping carriers. And then lastly, rail freight. This is something that is oftentimes overlooked or just not known. So China actually has the most robust rail system in the entire world. That for starters, that's number one. And for number two, they actually built this to go all the way from China to the UK, and with good reason, obviously, to enhance more of the global commerce and support more of this Belt and Road initiative that they have going on. But this is an interesting option that I don't see too many freight forwarders offering for some reason. It was an option where they didn't necessarily have an exact price that they can work out because there wasn't enough commerce going from the from Europe back to China, so it was very expensive for them to transport empty containers. But as we see, more commerce eastbound, we are going to start to see those prices go down. So that time is a little bit less than half of what you're seeing for the ocean freight. And It's much more reliable. They tend to have great partners for last mile trucking as well. And so we're seeing that pricing anywhere between 14 to 16,000 going to the UK. And on average, it should take about 22, 23 days to actually arrive there. Let me go to the next one from there. And just some general statistics. So rail freight, again, is something that just not enough businesses actually know about. And so this is sort of the growth trend that we've seen year over year. Somewhere in that 30 to 40%. Obviously, we see in one instance that it is 50%. Or a little bit more than 50%, but it took a huge uptick when it came to PPE in 2020. So we see that massive uptick from 8,000 trains going back and forth to over 12,000. And so, with 1.14 million containers transported across 92 cities, it's something I don't know why freight forwarders don't tend to offer it. I just don't think they have the proper partnerships with it. But if you are looking for sort of that quicker option, a little bit more expensive, but it also helps improve your cash flow because you don't have to order, 2 containers that have to go sea freight and then store those. You can maybe have more of a lean process for manufacturing and then sort of that just-in-time supply chain. And so when you're choosing your options, it's important to also keep in mind what you're going to be shipping to. So if you're shipping via rail freight, you need to know that obviously you're going to have to gather all the same documentation as you would for ocean and sea freight, but you're not going to have to pay duties along the way. I have gotten that question a few times where, if it's crossing between different countries, am I going to have to pay within those countries when they're switching trains? No, you're only going to have to pay VAT and taxes on the country it actually gets delivered to. When it comes to the ocean freight, this is something, again, that is going to have a very vast knock-on effect, something that I think a lot of people are underestimating to global trade. 12%, it was estimated that about 12% of global trade goes through the Suez Canal. That's a humongous amount right there. And so we're talking immense container shortages. Again, those pricing surges not caused by your freight forwarders. These are caused by the shipping carriers. And countries on both sides, both in Europe and in China, are fighting to try to keep those pricings as low as possible from those shipping carriers. And then we're also seeing those, more of the spoiled goods and those that are just more perishable and that they'll never actually recover that money back. And then when it comes to express air, I was talking about anywhere between $8 and $10. In some instances, is more than $10. When they normalize it, should go down to about $2 to $5 per kilogram, depending on what that product actually is. And so, this pricing is elevated for all the knock-on effects from COVID, all the lack of travel when it comes to air freight, as well as just the lack of travel in the EU right now. And last mile delivery. So when it comes to the 2 major markets that Paul was talking about, Amazon and eBay, I did do a little bit of consolidation for your options because a lot of times someone might think, hey, Amazon FBA is the only option, or tends to look like the only option in the US, but you do have multiple options in the EU. And with the with Brexit going on, you do have to take into consideration that you can't fulfill directly from, let's say, Germany or France directly into the UK anymore using Amazon FBA. So your 3 options are MFN, so that's where you fill it yourself. You might use a third-party logistics center to use their shipping carriers. Or I did leave a link there also where Amazon actually provides some service providers, so you could shop around, see what the rates are. You could see the ratings on them, which I found pretty cool. So you do have a few options there. When it comes to, when it comes to EBN, you essentially are shipping into a single country. So let's say you're using Germany as your hub, and Amazon fulfills all those orders for you. The issue with that, although you are going to be paying just VAT for the goods that for where you're storing your goods, which in that case, would be Germany. Those cross-border fees can definitely add up, and that longer transportation time, just as we were talking about earlier, could definitely impact that customer experience. So if you want quicker lead times and you're a little bit more comfortable with your books, and you have a great accountant that can help you consolidate all of your taxes and VAT, then you could go with the pan-European fulfillment, which means you'd be shipping it to one Amazon fulfillment center, let's say in Germany, and they would ship that off to France and ship that off to Poland and ship that off to Spain. And they would have local supply without any additional charge to you. And then, of course, you would have to fulfill it also to the UK. That way you can fulfill your orders in the UK. So that is a bit more information there. And eBay. With eBay being so vast, one thing to keep in mind is that they do have a global shipping program. So you could also sell into, let's say, the UK or into the EU from the US using their global shipping program. Or you have the option of doing self-fulfillment. And lastly, just like everyone else, we do have an offer. So when you do sign up for a free Noviland account, just type in ecomround, all one word, and that referral code portion, and you'll get all that good stuff you see to the left.
Awesome. Thanks, Francois. Yeah, make sure you go check out and take advantage of all these exclusive offers. Again, everyone, it's in the descriptions of the comment sections of watching this on YouTube or on Facebook as well. So lastly, without further ado, payment side of things, and just kind of giving a quick buzz on payments. It's confusing for people to understand that when receiving and accepting payments in different marketplaces around the world, that you're actually going to be receiving not your local currency, but on different currencies, wherever you're selling into different marketplaces. In this example, you're receiving either the pound, or if you're selling in the UK, or you're selling into Europe, you're receiving the euro. Excuse me, I'm trying not to run over my dog. But the euro, when you're converting that, you're receiving it from customers who are purchasing in that currency. Either a solution like in Amazon, for example, if you're selling and you're located in the United States, they're going to convert the euro for you every 2 weeks, just like clockwork. They're going to convert those funds over to you and make sure that you get paid out in a timely fashion. That's great in context, but what Amazon or other processes or marketplaces don't tell you is that when they convert it, you're paying anywhere from 2 to 4% conversion fee. So that's money left on the table. You as a seller should make sure that money works for you, whether it's paying for your more freight or goods, or putting it into more marketplaces, or your advertising, or just even paying out your taxes and other entities like that. So make sure that you know for a fact that when you are receiving funds in different marketplaces around the world, specifically in Europe, make sure your money works for you. Specifically, if you're converting funds back and forth all the time between different currencies, those fees start to add up. So you as a seller need to know that even though they're small, the conversion's happening all the time. That's when they add up. So there's third-party solutions like Ping Pong Payments that is going to allow you to keep money in that marketplace. For example, if you're selling mainly in .com, but 10% of your business is in the UK, make sure, and it's not a lot from the get-go, you're not doing millions of dollars every 2 weeks or per month. You can let it sit there and make sure that that money works for you. You're not paying all the additional fees and conversion fees as well. And even in events like Brexit, when they do happen, the value of a currency can fluctuate so often when big global news happens such as that. So you can actually lose a ton of money when the economy mentions, hey, Brexit, we're actually going through with it. The valuation of a pound versus the dollar will drop, just like the stock market. So be aware that if you want to make sure you get the most value out of your currency, make sure you can actually have control over it and not let a bank or another entity actually have that control. That's the quick one I wanted to buzz through everyone because of the top of the hour. We want to make sure everyone covers everything. I wanted to thank my panelists today because we're constantly buzzing around in different things, but we want to make sure that if you're watching this, you're understanding the top level information you need in order to start selling in Europe. Obviously, we didn't cover everything in full detail. If you have questions about payments, contact myself or Francois for shipping logistics, Paul about different marketplaces, and Jonathan about paying tax. Make sure that you contact all of us directly. And then, of course, you can actually do that, get access to all of our decks by just going to the merchantspring.io/e-commerce roundtable. Just insert your email information. You'll get emailed that deck of information right then and there. Gentlemen, anything else before we conclude and people have to pop off? Pretty easy.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you guys.
Thanks,
Yeah, we
guys.
buzzed through that. But again, we'll be doing this. We'll go into selling into North America here in about 2 weeks or so. So stay tuned for that specific day. I know we're gonna pinpoint that down specifically with people traveling and having different schedules. So stay tuned. Thank you for watching us live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube as well. Make sure you subscribe to all of our social media channels, and then also go ahead and subscribe to our all of our different information, whether it's email lists or just checking us to work with those services as well. Make sure you guys take care of yourselves out there. And thank you to my panelists for joining me on another edition of Ecom Roundtable.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.